What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Monday, April 7th edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. Sorry for the late start today, later than usual. Not that I'm ever on time for these, but I was trying to start at 4:30, but got pushed back a little bit, trying to make sure that our projections were set up. And that's a big announcement. I had mentioned it before. We started at the beginning of the year that we were going to have MLB projections on Run the Sims for the first couple weeks, or first week, I guess, of the season. We had Utical doing, posting his manual projections from his head while we finished up the model behind the scenes. But the model's done. Projections are up on the site. They're available. You can use them. We, have some minor housekeeping stuff that we still need to do, adding timestamps, stuff like that we're realizing, isn't there as we go to use them. But really excited about those. They are up on the site and really looking forward to using these. I think that for me, it's been a very long time. For anybody that knows, has watched my shows for any period of time, they know how much I hate pushing stuff on shows and selling things. But it's been a very long time since I've been able to, go on a show and honestly be like, I think this is as good as it gets. This is all I'm going to use. I think these are great. They're doing everything that I want. And that's what, we have right now. Our goal with the four of us ever since we started Endgame and then we bought Run the Sims was that, if we're going to put something out, it's going to be something that we believe in, that we think is really good, as opposed to, these are better than people can make on their own and it's good enough. So really excited about them. They, take into account all of the newest data that we can get our hands on. Stuff, if you've seen me talk about things on a show, they are in some way accounted for in the projections. Utical, obviously digs into a lot of the same stuff I do. He's talked about it in endgame videos, the stuff that he looks at in MLB. We've done videos together talking about it. And it was important to us that the projections we put out reflect exactly how we look at MLB DFS, the stuff that we want to see. We're really excited about everything that goes into these. We think that it should give you an edge. You have quality projections. They are, built with, like I said, the most recent data that you have, as opposed to, I think, some older models that have been around that I'm sure have not been updated to include the most recent stuff that we have. So really, really excited about that. The link to use those is in the description below. $100 a month for those, so not any more expensive than anywhere else. Highly recommend checking those out. I'm really excited to use them and walk through everything on this show, taking a look at how I would be playing DraftKings tonight's DraftKings MLB slate. But again, those are live, so very excited about that. Also, obviously you get access to the Discord if you sign up. So if you do run into any sort of issues, be sure to let us know in there so we can get those taken care of as quickly as possible. But going to dive into this one. We have a 7-game slate. We have some weather issues, but last I checked, it doesn't look like anything that is a clear washout or anything like that. Just a lot of shitty weather in general, some rain, cold temperatures. Nothing that at the moment, at least, I am actively avoiding. Obviously, that can change between now and lock. We have a couple hours to go, so be sure to keep an eye on the weather. But nothing that looks like something I'm actively avoiding right now, at least. Power said for anybody playing the DK Turbo slate, I assume the 641. Arenado was scratched, so get him out of your lineups if you're playing the cards, and you obviously have a new lineup there. But there are, I quickly looked at my player exposures, and there are definitely a couple spots that I was surprised by. So, we'll get into those. A couple spots that I know we are very different than the industry as far as projection goes. Most spots, obviously, we are pretty close, and that's what you would expect to see, regardless of whatever projection model you're using. We're not completely reinventing the wheel. We're just going to have, different data, different weights on some spots. So I'm going to get into that, starting here with Miami taking on the Mets in Citi Field. Mets with about a 5-run implied total. Marlins at 3. Kodai Senga going for the Mets. For Miami, we have on the mound. Somebody that I am obviously not playing. But we have, let me get the right screen up. Valente Belozo going for the Marlins. So, yeah, not surprised that I'm not getting to him. Not getting to too much Kodai Senga either. This is a spot where I think he's a perfectly good play. I don't think we have any major difference in his projection versus other places. I think this is probably just an ownership thing for me combined with salary. It's obviously a good matchup here against Miami. There's nothing wrong with getting to him. I wouldn't be surprised if, when I do rerun everything closer to lock, maybe I have a little bit more. This isn't, a projections driven thing or anything like that. He obviously does look good. Good matchup with Miami. I guess I could move the projection over here. That would probably help. But yeah, this isn't, like anything showing up that he doesn't project well or anything like that. 20.5 DraftKings point projection on him. I think it's probably just an ownership thing. I have been noticing as I've redone some of my own process, some of my own MLB stuff, I have been going a little bit more contrarian at pitcher this year than I have in the past. That's not something I'm really upset about. But that's probably what's mostly driving this year is my personal process, not the projections, because we do have him projected pretty much in line with industry. And I think it would be hard not to. Obviously he's a good strikeout pitcher. He's got a good matchup here against Miami. Going back to the start of last season, this is not right. Fangraphs has him, or the page I'm looking at has him with a 42.5% strikeout projection. That is clearly wrong. But last year, okay, I don't know what it's showing me. Anyway, Cody Senga is a good strikeout pitcher. The exact strikeout percentage is not showing up correctly for some reason that I can't figure out. But good strikeout pitcher, good matchup, good park. All of that is true. I think it's just that I can get lineups that project similarly enough and not take on 37% ownership here. Justin Steele in the next game is getting a bunch of ownership as well. I'm not getting there either. So I think it's kind of just that I'm sacrificing some ownership at pitcher. But Senga does, I think, look very good as long as you can just find ways to be contrarian elsewhere in your lineup. Sorry for kind of the stumbling through this. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with my Fangraphs page and why it's not showing me the data that I want. Yeah, I have no idea. But anyway, Senga looks good. Offensively, I am getting to a lot of the Mets bats. Perfectly fine with that. You can see not a ton of projected ownership coming into them right now. Pete Alonso showing up in 29% of my lineups. I think he's my highest owned hitter right now. Juan Soto right behind him. Obviously not going to be upset about being 2x the field there. The park does suck. That is the biggest deterrent here, I think. But at the same time, you don't have a ton of good hitters parks on this slate. You have, a game in San Francisco. You have a game in Arizona. You have a game in Seattle. Kauffman Stadium is good for offense in KC, but it's not great for home runs. You have really shitty weather in Wrigley, so that's not likely to be conducive to hitting home runs. Wind blowing in there, and the temperature is like 32 degrees. So this is a slate where you always have to keep in mind when you're looking at parks and thinking about offensive environments, everything's relative. Citi Field is not a good offensive park. It's not great for hitting home runs, but when the other options on the slate are not really much better, it just kind of comes out in the wash. And then you're just getting back to an advantageous matchup here against one of the weaker pitching options on the slate with offense that does have a lot of talent. Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, obviously going to be excited about getting to them as well. Hayden Senger, not excited, but he's cheap and a catcher. Vientos, we know the type of power upside that he has. So overall, just looks like a team that I want to get to at low ownership here. We can take a look at how some of the five-man Mets stacks look. We click on those. Get to the right screen over here. Yeah, so I mean, good pitching here is Zach Gallen, Hunter Green, still getting some ownership, but not as much as Senga. And then, you compare them here. I have them paired with Mariners in that top lineup, have them paired with the Reds in the next lineup. A lot of Hunter Green, that's going to be a theme throughout this show, I can tell you that. Paired with the Marlins there, paired with the Padres. So you can kind of fit them with whoever you want. You can still get good pitching with them. They're cheap enough, especially if you're using Senger as your fifth guy in the stack as your catching option. So I think it's a combination of they are in one of the best spots on the slate. They have the highest implied run total. They're not getting a ton of ownership. And then I can still just pair them with plenty of high upside guys around them. It's not like they're pushing me into a situation where I'm looking at the rest of my lineups and I hate what I'm getting to or anything like that. So with the way things look right now, at least, very happy to be getting to the Mets really throughout the entire lineup. I'm not getting to the Miami side all that much. I do have 12% Wagaman. I have 11% Otto Lopez. So getting the very cheap value bats here in the middle of the order. Second base eligible, Otto Lopez hitting third. Eric Wagaman hitting fifth with first base and third base eligibility. So I do think that they make some sense, just not only from a value standpoint, but also, as I mentioned, not getting to nearly as much Senga as the field. I don't necessarily need a full 5-man Miami stack to go up against him. I can kind of just grab a value piece here, a value piece there, and hopefully, they run into one against him. With Lopez, you get some stolen base upside as well. But if you also just wanted to not have Miami and not play Senga, that's fine. And like I said, if you want to play Senga, that's obviously fine too. But it's not a situation where I think you have to be like stacking against him because he's not drastically underpriced or anything like that. So it is conceivable that he just goes out there, has a pretty good start. Miami doesn't really do anything, but he loses out to Zach Gallen, Hunter Green, other pitchers. Maybe a cheap pitcher puts up a better value score, and then Hunter Green beats him at the top or something like that. So it's not a price point on Senga where I think it's like a really binary outcome where, if he isn't a slate winning pitcher, then Miami was the slate winning stack. I think there's a pretty big margin in the middle where Senga's fine, the Marlins aren't very good, but he's also not like the pitcher you have to have or anything like that. So I'm not going to do a ton of Miami overall. Do obviously have them a little bit, but mostly it's Wagaman and Lopez as values there, and then really just prioritizing the Mets as a stack. Moving on to the Rangers and the Cubs, I'm a little surprised that I don't have more Texas because I do know that as a whole, offensively, our projections are a little bit higher than market on them and also lower on steal. So those two things go hand in hand. I'm not very surprised that I'm not getting too much steal, but on the starting pitcher side, actually not getting to any steal right now, but he is projected for 22% ownership. I think he's fine. 7,700 is a good price tag. Obviously, he's a good pitcher overall. Going back to the start of last season, 23.8% K percentage, 3.65 xFIP. The Rangers do have a solid offense. He's not an elite strikeout pitcher, but that is made up for by the salary. But I do think it's just a spot where our projection is lower on him than the industry. And so what ends up happening is that if he's being projected, 18, 19, 20 fantasy points elsewhere at 7,700, that's just going to drive him into a lot of lineups. You see that 22% ownership. And with our projection on him, he looks good. He's a good point per dollar play. It's just not that different than a lot of other pitchers that you can get to. And so if you are playing with an approach like I am, where at least to some extent you're looking to exploit the field and factor in ownership, I'm going to end up just getting to other pitchers that project similarly around him. So again, it's not that he projects terribly. It's that we have him projected lower than the industry as a whole. And since the industry as a whole is going to be driving ownership, it's kind of just keeping him out of my lineups. Hopefully, he just doesn't put up a huge game. And again, not a great strikeout pitcher or anything like that. And you do have very good strikeout pitchers elsewhere on the slate. Already talked about one with Senga, who I'm also not really getting to, but have a couple of others coming up as well. Nathan Eovaldi on the other side here, getting 18.5% ownership at 8,700. He's in 18.5% of my lineups, so right in line with the field there. Terrible hitting weather, as has been mentioned a couple of times already in Wrigley. Eovaldi is a solid pitcher as well. Going back to the start of last season, 24.5% K percentage, 3.31 xFIP. Typically relatively efficient, doesn't walk a lot of guys. That allows him to work a little bit deeper into games as well. Obviously not an easy matchup here against the Cubs either. Solid offense, but not good hitting conditions. Ownership is reasonable. Price tag, I think, is reasonable, although he is a little bit more expensive than Steele is. So I think it's perfectly fine to be getting to him. Offensively, I don't want a ton from this game. The offenses, again, they're talented, but hitting weather here just really is not ideal. You do have stolen base threats. You have, Langford going for Texas. You have Semien on Texas. Kyle Tucker, obviously, is just an elite hitter all around, but just not a game where I'm really targeting offenses. Neither is the field. You obviously can kind of always make the case for the Rangers have good hitters or the Cubs have good hitters, but pretty tough to really like this hitting environment given the weather and the fact that both of these pitchers are pretty good. Jake said, any concern for potentially shorter leashes on Eovaldi and Steele because of weather? Not really. I mean, the concern would be more so if it goes into some sort of a delay. That would obviously be a problem, but it seems more likely that it's just they're going to play through shitty weather. So there's nothing that logically changes from like the fourth inning to the fifth inning to the sixth inning. If you start them, they're just out there pitching in cold weather. There's nothing that outside of a delay that makes me think it's going to be like, oh, well, we only want him to throw 70 pitches today instead of 85 or anything like that. The bigger concern would be if you get like a snow downpour or something like that, but I don't think that is supposed to happen. So it's not something that I'm factoring in. I'm not expecting them to be on significantly shorter leashes or anything like that, since we're not expecting actual delays in this game, assuming that they get started. Jake asked what are out props at. I have no idea. Haven't looked. Minnesota taking on Kansas City. But I guess to elaborate on that more, I never look at the prop market because it's not an efficient market. Like any market that I can just crush with projections isn't a market that I'm going to use to make projections. I think I've talked about it on non-DFS related shows before, but that's one of the weirdest things to me in the DFS industry is you have projection sites at the same time being like, you can use our projections and crush props. Also, our projections are like driven by props, and we're going to double check them against props. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I never double check props if my projections are telling me that I should bet a prop. I'm going to just bet it because I know that I can beat them. Not talking out props in particular, just prop market in general. That's not to say that like if you have a projection that is drastically off, you shouldn't dig into it. Like when I run my strikeout props, if I have something telling me that I have some unbelievable edge against the market, I am going to look and probably figure out what I'm projecting wrong. But it's just not something that I ever look at as far as like the prop market, the out market is telling me that they're going to throw 5 innings. Like, no. It's more likely in a market like that some idiot influencer on Twitter has decided they're going to throw 5 innings and told all of his subscribers to bet the under on like 5.5, and now it's down to 15 outs or something like that. That's just the problem with using markets that don't have enough liquidity. Is it's just going to be driven by non-sharp betting. Minnesota taking on Kansas City, 4.5 implied run total for both sides of this one. For Kansas City, Michael Lorenzen. For the Twins, Simeon Woods-Richardson. Neither one are pitchers that I typically get all that much of. The field's not getting to them. I'm not getting to them right now. This park is not good for strikeouts. We talked about that before. It is a good offensive park overall. Not good for home runs, not good for strikeouts, good for pretty much everything in between. Doubles, triples, singles, massive outfield. The weather in this game is, I assume, shitty because it's just bad everywhere. Doesn't look like unusually bad, though. Don't see any notes on it actually in Roth's report, which is what I use for weather. So 4.5 implied run total for both teams looks fine. Not really interested in either pitcher. Pricing is fine, ownership's low, but I'm still not getting to either one. Offensively, I am getting to both offenses, it looks like, a little bit here. Starting with the Minnesota side, going up against Lorenzen. He has historically, I believe, been somewhat reverse splits. Going back to the start of last year, 207 expected ISO to right-handed hitters, 125 to lefties. Go back to 2023, 194 to righties, 161 to lefties. Higher strikeout percentage against lefties as well. Has a changeup. He has thrown 28% of the time to lefties since the start of last season. Also a cut fastball and a curveball are pitches 2 through 4 for him. Those are all pitches that generally play better against opposite-handed hitters. He does have a slider that he's thrown to righties 13% of the time. Has not had a ton of success with it. 11% swing and miss percentage going back to last year. He has not thrown it yet this year in any of the 50 pitches that he's thrown to righties. So seems like he's trying to make some sort of pitch mix change, but the stuff he throws generally does play better against opposite-handed hitters. So I would expect right-handed hitters to do better against him. And that's what you're seeing here. Byron Buxton, Christian Vasquez, Carlos Correa coming in as the top Minnesota bats for me. Matt Wallner at 3,900 leading off. Generally just hits the ball hard. Good price tag. Good lineup position. And you don't want to overweight reverse splits either. You don't want to just say, oh, well, I'm not going to play left-handed hitters here against Michael Lorenzen. Like, the guy's still an average pitcher. You shouldn't be shying away from left-handed bats that are good and affordable and all of that. It's more so just saying, like, you can look to these right-handed bats too. He does give up power to same-handed hitters, and there are legitimate reasons for it, which is always something that you want to take a look at when reverse splits pop up. If there's not a legitimate reason as far as the stuff that he throws, it becomes a lot more likely that you're just looking at some sort of sample size issue or something like that. But Buxton, Vasquez, Correa all look good. No issues with Wallner or Castro either. A little surprised I'm not getting the more Jose Miranda, but he is third base only. 3,600 though, good price tag. Batting sixth looks fine. Trevor Larnach, 3,500 looks fine. So the Twins as a whole, pretty affordable. There is power in this lineup. There is right-handed power. Again, the park is not good for hitting home runs, but it is good for scoring runs. So that's good as well. If we pull up 5-man stacks, God, I'm getting a lot of Mets. Maybe that'll change by lock. Maybe it won't. But Minnesota kind of middle of the pack as far as 5-man stacks go, middle of the road as far as all stacks go. So they look pretty good. I'm not too far. I'm pretty much around the field, I think, in the aggregate. A little bit over on guys like Buxton and Vasquez, a little bit under on Miranda, Larnach, Ty France. But overall, just I think a pretty solid offense to be getting to. On the other side, Woods Richardson going up against Kansas City since the start of last season. 171 expected ISO to righties for Woods Richardson, 137 to lefties. He's another one that does have a changeup. He throws quite a bit, 27% usage to lefties, but he has thrown his slider 39% of the time to right-handed hitters. Strikeout percentage is pretty balanced, 21.5% to righties, 20% to lefties. Has given up some more power to righties, though, as I mentioned. Salvador Perez, right in line with the field on him. Basically 2x on a pretty cheap Michael Massey at what is typically not the best second base position. Jonathan India, third base outfield eligible, so pretty easy to get him into lineups. Field's getting to 14%. I'm getting to 7. I'm a little bit under the field on Bobby Witt, which sucks because obviously I would love to be getting to Bobby Witt. But I think Kansas City is pretty similar to Minnesota. Obviously, same park, similar implied run totals. Witt, India, Perez driving a little bit more ownership than Minnesota was, and maybe that's why I'm not getting quite as much. But both of these offenses, I think, are pretty similar. They're both in that same range where if you're looking at them and you want to get to them, it's pretty easy, I think, to make it work. The ownership is not alarming. The matchups are fine, especially, again, in the context of a slate that does have poor hitting environments, poor hitting weather, good pitchers parks, poor hitting parks. I don't have any issue whatsoever in getting to either one of these teams. Houston taking on Seattle. This is one of the more interesting spots that I'm getting to. I don't think this is projections based. I think that it is my process based and just the lack of ownership projected to come into Hayden Wesneski. But I am getting an alarming amount of Hayden Wesneski. I, again, don't think our projection is really different than other places, so it's not that. I think it's just the lack of ownership on him at 7,500 compared to alternatives. And really, if you think about what you would want your process to do, if Hayden Wesneski is projecting for 14 to 15 fantasy points and Justin Steele is projecting for 15 to 16 fantasy points, and it's a $200 price difference, but you're getting 3 times the ownership to Steele, I would probably want to just be taking a pretty big stand on Wesneski. Now, obviously, if you disagree with the projections there, like a lot of the industry does, and you think that the gap should be bigger between the two of them, then that's going to factor into things, but I don't. And so I'm just getting a lot of Wesneski. Hopefully he beats out Steele, gives me a little bit of a leg up in lineups that are looking for pitchers in that 7 to 8K range. Going back to the start of last season, 22.6% strikeout percentage as a starter for Wesneski, 4.27 xFIP. That is a bit worse than Steele. 15.3% K minus BB percentage compared to 17.5% for Steele. Not as good a pitcher as Steele, but not markedly different. And he is pitching in Seattle. Great park for pitching. You do have strikeouts in that Seattle lineup as well. So, Devin Scott, I'm not sure if he was referring to Wesneski or not, but the park should limit Wesneski's home run issues. Again, I think he projects a little bit behind Steele. I don't think he's as good a pitcher as Steele, but I don't think the gap is like 4 or 5 fantasy points like the industry seems to think it is. So perfectly happy to be getting to him if this ownership holds. Obviously, if you were to get a situation where, by lock, he's coming in at like 15% and Steele is still coming in at 20% or he's down to 17% or whatever, then a lot of this starts turning into Justin Steele because there's no ownership gap to really consider there. But if you're going to give me a 3-to-1 ownership gap, I'm going to just sacrifice a point in projection in MLB. I mean, it's meaningless when you factor in the range of outcomes, the standard deviations for MLB fantasy production. On the Seattle side, obviously a more difficult matchup here for Logan Gilbert. He is very good. He's 9,500 taking on Houston. Houston does have a low implied run total. The park is great for pitching. Gilbert at home is very, very good. Gilbert in general is very, very good. I'm not getting to him at that price tag and ownership, though, but I would certainly throw him in the Kodai Senga category of I would like to be getting more. 28% strikeout percentage since the start of last year, 3 flat xFIP, good pitcher. I do think that part of this is being driven by Hunter Green, who we haven't talked about yet, but I have a lot, and I'm fine with that. I have more to say about him when we get there, but I think that is a factor in the Logan Gilbert and Cody Senga exposures that I have, is that we do have a projection difference on Hunter Green, and I think that it's warranted. I like Hunter Green a lot here, and so I'm just getting a lot of him, and it's obviously going to cost me some Gilbert, cost me some Senga, and when you look at the way ownership is projected, I'm fine with that. But again, just like I was saying with Senga, I don't want anybody to look at this and be like, Logan Gilbert's a bad play and start like taking Logan Gilbert out of your lineups. Logan Gilbert's a perfectly fine play. This is a process-driven thing for me where I'm not getting him in lineups right now, but you don't have to play exactly like me. I wouldn't recommend playing exactly like me. He is perfectly fine. I'm not looking at him saying like, oh shit, people are going to play Logan Gilbert tonight. Let me get some more money down. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. The matchup is obviously difficult, but he's also a very good pitcher. Offensively, I am getting to some of this game, which is a little surprising in this park, but Yordan Alvarez is really good, only getting 7% ownership on a 7-game slate. Isaac Paredes is cheap. That's about all I can say for him here. He is somebody that I will really like in Houston this year because I think that park is absolutely perfect for where he hits his home runs. This game is not in Houston, so really you're just kind of playing the positive correlation game with Alvarez, with Diaz, with Walker, with Altuve, and he is cheap enough. He is, probably, I don't think we have a Houston lineup yet, or at least we didn't when I ran stuff, probably hitting second, and decent enough value piece, just, hope good things happen. But this is not a park where I would expect a lot of home run upside from Paredes. But this, top part of the stack here against Gilbert, you are getting negative correlation on the field, which is nice. You are getting a lot of talent, which is nice. Obviously, the park sucks, but talented 1 through 5 here that isn't getting much ownership and does negatively correlate with the field. Perfectly fine with me in large field tournaments, even though, obviously targeting Logan Gilbert in T-Mobile Park is not at the top of my list of favorite things to do. On this slate, I do think it makes some sense. Seattle on the other side looks like maybe getting a little bit more ownership, 15% coming into Cal Raleigh. Nothing wrong with that. One of the best power hitting catchers in baseball. And as I've mentioned a bunch of times before, generally playing the Mariners at home is going to be a little bit more appealing than playing their opponents because they're priced to play in this park. They play half their games there. It's just going to be naturally baked in. Whereas the opponent probably was playing in a better hitter's park prior to going into Seattle. So a lot of times you will see them a little bit overpriced. Today, though, I don't think that's really the case. 5,400 on Alvarez is not a particularly high price tag for him. Same for all these other Astros bats. They're pretty cheap in general. But for somebody like Cal Raleigh, he would be an even better power hitting catcher if he just played in a different park. His stats obviously are just naturally weighting or factoring in that he plays half his games here. And so at 4,200, you wish he was playing in a different park, but he's still going to look good here. Same for Julio Rodriguez. I am below the field, which isn't too surprising given how much Wisniewski I have. Maybe that's driving my Wisniewski a little bit too. Usually, I don't see negative correlation drive my pitching exposures as much as it drives hitting exposures at times, but it does still exist. It's not as powerful, but if Wisniewski does go have a good start, not only am I getting a good start at 7,500 and 8% ownership, but you also are lowering the chances of this 5 to 10, in Raleigh's case, 15% owned stack doing well. So there is some negative correlation there also, even though that's not as big a deal for pitching, I don't think, as it is for hitting. But Seattle, I think is fine, but given the ownership, I do like getting to the Houston side. Plenty of talent over there at low ownership. Orioles taking on Zach Gallen in Arizona. Zach Eflin going for the Orioles. Getting to 9% Eflin projected for 3% ownership. Getting to 6% Gallen projected for 14% ownership. I think both of these pitchers are fine. I do like the cheap price tag and lack of ownership on Zach Eflin. Not a great strikeout pitcher, but he is a solid pitcher overall. The matchup's not great. But going back to the start of last season, 19% strikeout percentage, only a 3.4% walk percentage, though, 3.85 xFIP generally can work. a little bit deeper into games because of his efficiency, because of not walking guys, because of not striking out a ton of guys. Not that that is overall, you would obviously from a DFS standpoint prefer strikeouts to an extra batter faced or two, but there is at least some redeeming trade-off there where he can work a little bit deeper. And mostly it's just that he's cheap. Like, he's not a $6,900 pitcher from a talent standpoint. He's not getting any ownership. You can mix him in with some more popular bats with, a more popular SP1. Maybe if you are playing Cody Senga, you have Zach Eflin as an SP2 to offset some ownership. So that's fine. Not taking any huge stand there, but I think he's okay as a contrarian value option. And then Zach Gallen is getting some ownership. I think an $8,300 price tag for him is pretty good. I'm about half the field. The matchup against the O's obviously is not ideal. Good Baltimore offense. Somebody just mentioned the roof being open there. That is important to note on a slate like this too, where you do have such bad weather in most places. The Orioles lineup is pretty solid today. Henderson, Rutschman, O'Hearn, Westberg, Mullins 1 through 5, Mountcastle, Kerstad, Urias, and Holiday. So really no easy outs in that lineup. Ramon Urias is the guy that you would look at probably the most and think that he's not a good hitter, but he's like a league average to slightly above average hitter. Obviously, Jackson Holiday and Heston Kjerstad are still prospect status. You don't know exactly what they are, but likely to be above average hitters. So not an easy matchup for Gallen, but certainly a good pitcher. And again, I think you would argue that he's more talented than an $8,300 salary. So I think he's fine to get to. I'm just not getting too much of him. Before we move on to the final two games, before we get on to me talking about Hunter Green, reminder that the Run the Sims projections are live at runthesims.com. Use the link in the description below. Sign up. Use those. All the stuff that I've wanted to see to go into projections, we have it. Utica oversaw all of it. All the stuff that he wants is in there. So we're really excited about this and very much looking forward to using those. You can get access to them now. The full projections, the modeled projections are now up at the Run the Sim site. And also, if I didn't mention it before, they do also have its full stat projections from our back-end simulations. So if you're looking to use them for prop betting or whatever, you do have access to all of that. We are going to build out some more prop betting stuff going forward. That stuff's not ready yet, the actual tools itself, but the data is there for you. If you want to use it to bet props, you have access to pretty much whatever you want. Home run, projected home runs are in there, projected strikeouts, total batters faced, singles, doubles, triples, stolen bases, whatever you're looking for, they are in there along with your DFS projections. So you can get some more bang for your buck that way as well. Obviously, DFS is very volatile, no matter how good your projections are, no matter how good you are, your process is, whatever. It doesn't always quickly lead itself to making more money. But offsetting that, if you're in a state where you can with prop betting, I think is a very good idea. It's something that I like to be able to do. And so I think it is a pretty big value add to have those projections in there as well, so that you can kind of balance out your DFS play until you have a good night. Moving on to the Reds and the Giants. Hunter Green taking on the Giants in San Francisco. 24% projected ownership to a $7,900 Hunter Green. I don't get it. I have 71%. He's my highest owned player right now. And this is a spot where I think we're projecting him a little bit better. We're a couple points higher than other spots in the industry. His average fastball velocity so far this season is up 2 miles an hour. He already threw hard. He averaged like 97.5 miles an hour on his fastball last year. He's throwing 99.5 miles an hour on average on his fastball so far this season. And on top of that, obviously you don't want to read too much into a couple starts. I think he's thrown like 12 innings this year. But he's somebody that we saw improvements from anyway. Like, this is a very, very highly regarded pitching prospect. I believe 3rd overall pick. Very highly regarded from the time he was drafted. And when he first came up, moved pretty quickly, got up to the majors. You saw the strikeout potential. You saw the really good stuff. But you also saw, him struggle with some power. He would walk guys. Obviously, playing in Great American Ballpark is not ideal either. He made some improvements last year, though. Less than 1 home run per 9 innings, 0.72 home runs allowed per 9. 28.2% strikeout percentage is higher than any pitcher on this slate other than Cody Senga. It's tied with Michael King. 9% walk percentage is still a little elevated, but nothing alarming or anything like that. 19.2 K minus BB percentage is good. And then you're getting this huge ballpark shift as well, going into San Francisco, pitching in Oracle Park. About as almost as big a shift as you can get, going from Great American to Oracle. So really like that as well. As far as splits go, going back to last season, actually had a 31.6% K percentage against lefties compared to 25.1% against righties. We do not have a Giants lineup yet, but typically a pretty balanced lineup there. We assume that you're going to be getting Lamont Wade, Lee, Patrick Bailey, Yastrzemski from the left side. Righty struck out like 25.5% against, or 25% against him. Only a 109 expected ISO to righties since the start of last year, 125 to lefties, 261 expected WOBA to lefties, 270 to righties. I mean, I think you could realistically make the case that this is the most talented pitcher outside of Cody Senga on the slate. Like, I probably would say, look, Logan Gilbert's ahead of him, and then I think you can kind of throw Hunter Green in the mix with any of these other guys. Hunter Green, Michael King, Zach Gallen, they're all very good. And I think that we just haven't really seen Hunter Green quite put it all together yet. But he definitely looks like he's trending in that direction. And I really, really like getting him here at 7,900 in a great park for pitching and only 24% ownership. So this is something else that is kind of driving, I think, my lack of Steele, Senga, and Gilbert is having a higher projection on Hunter Green than those guys. Like we have him projected slightly higher than Logan Gilbert, who is getting the same ownership at a higher salary. We have him projected slightly higher than Senga, who is getting more ownership at a higher salary. We have him projected significantly higher than Steele at the same price range. We have him significantly higher than Webb. We have him higher than Evaldi. We have him as the highest projected pitcher on the slate, actually, now that I look at it. Not by a huge margin. Like, again, when you're talking baseball medium projections, the standard deviations are big, and a 1 point difference isn't anything to care too much about. But we do have him as the highest projected pitcher on the slate at $7,900 and not even the highest owned pitcher on the slate. He's just going to end up in a lot of my lineups, and I'm going to be fine with that. Love getting Hunter Green here. Logan Webb on the other side, not getting to him. He's getting 16% ownership. 8,500 is just a relatively expensive price tag, I think, in the context of this slate. The park is good. The matchup is fine, but not a great strikeout pitcher. Much better real life pitcher than than DFS pitcher. 3.26 xFIP, 20.7% K percentage. He's not all that different from Zach Eflin, other than the park being better and the matchup being better. And he's $1,600 more expensive and getting 16% ownership. I think, he's okay. He's a good pitcher overall. He's probably not going to give up a lot of runs, but I would just rather get the guys with higher strikeout percentages at cheaper salaries and less ownership if I can. And that's really what's happening. Green has more ownership, but he's cheaper and just much better strikeout stuff. Wesneski has better strikeout stuff in a really good pitcher's park and is lower owned and cheaper. So I'm prioritizing that. So just not a spot that I'm really getting to. Again, not to say that I think he's a bad play. He's a good pitcher. He's fine. But he's just not one that I'm really getting to answer Ryan Saniam's question. No, I guess I have to say that I don't, since he's not in any of my lineups right now. But again, it's not like I want to differentiate, because there will be times throughout the course of the season that I look at a pitcher and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe people are playing this guy. I don't get it. Whatever. I completely get it. He's good. He's a good pitcher. 8,500 is fine. Baseball obviously is not like NBA or even NFL. You don't have to worry about point per dollar projection quite as much, because whoever hits a home run is going to be the best, one of the best point per dollar plays. You're going to have 3K guys that score 18, 20 fantasy points. So you don't have to be as nitpicky about your pitching point per dollar stuff. If Logan Webb should really be 8K, but he's 8,500, who gives a shit? He's fine. Play him. So I do want to differentiate there, that I'm not looking at Logan Webb and saying like, oh, I don't know, I don't understand this play. He's perfectly fine. He's just not in my lineups. There are other routes that I would prefer to go personally. Offensively, looking at the Giants, not getting to much of them, which shouldn't surprise anybody given how much I like Hunter Green here. Fields not getting to them either outside of Matt Chapman. Third base, just not a great position. 4,500 looks fine on Chapman. On the other side, for the Reds, I am getting to them offensively. I am fine with that. Again, Logan Webb is good. The park sucks, but there is talent in this offense. They're not getting much ownership. Ellie De La Cruz, 6-7% owned on a 7-game slate. I'll take that pretty much regardless of matchup. especially when you factor in the stolen base upside that he brings as well. It's not even like he has to hit a home run in this park or has to do significant damage against Webb. He just needs to get on base and do what he does. 6,100, obviously expensive, but the ceiling is massive. He's not getting a lot of ownership. I think he's just in that like Yordan Alvarez bucket where, yeah, I hate the matchup against Logan Webb or against Logan Gilbert in Seattle. I hate the matchup or don't like the matchup against Logan Webb in San Francisco, but I love the player and I love that they're not getting much ownership and you're just getting one of the highest upside players on the slate at sub 10% ownership. I will take that whenever. Again, Webb doesn't give up a lot of power. 122 expected ISO to lefties since the start of last season, 156 to righties, 22.5% K percentage against lefties, 19% against righties. It's not a matchup thing. It's just the amount of talent this guy has, the amount of DFS upside. Like he's built for DFS. All he does is hit, get extra base hits, steal bases, and yeah. TJ Friedel, 3,900, probably leading off. Some value there. Gavin Lux, second base outfield eligible, hitting the middle of the order most likely. Around 2x the field on him at 3,400. So I think what's happening with the Reds here outside of Elly De La Cruz is that you're just getting value. And if we take a look at like a 5-man red stack, my assumption here, I haven't looked at these yet, so maybe I'll look dumb, but my assumption is that you're going to look at the rest of the lineup and be really happy with how it looks. So here we have Logan Gilbert, we have Hunter Green, obviously going to like both of those. I don't like the matchup or the park, but Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, those guys are fine. When you pair them with, you have De La Cruz as an expensive guy in this lineup, and then you have, 2 top-end pitchers, 2 of the better offensive bats on the Cubs from a pure talent standpoint. Obviously, the matchup isn't great. The park sucks, all of that, or the weather, I should say, sucks. Here, you're paying down to Wisniewski, but you're getting Corbin Carroll, you're getting Jake Cronenworth, and you're getting Westberg as one-offs in addition to having De La Cruz in the lineup. Obviously going to be happy with that. Rutschman, Westberg, Mullins, 3-man with a 5-man red stack that includes De La Cruz. Going to be happy with that. Machado. Okay, my computer is just losing its mind right now. 3-man Padres, it looked like. All right, going to give up on this, but it looked like Machado, Cronenworth, and somebody else. Point being, you're making very high upside lineups where you can kind of think about it like, yeah, the Reds are not in a great spot, obviously, but there's just a ton of volatility in baseball. There is a lot of overall upside in the Reds lineup, and if they do well, not only are you capturing that low-owned upside against a pitcher that is getting some ownership, but you're also surrounding it with, Machado, Carroll, probably Tatis in there somewhere before my computer went crazy. Plenty of good offensive players around them, and De La Cruz himself, obviously really, really good as well, good pitching around it. So you can make some really high upside red stacks, even though they're not super likely to have a good game. When they do have a good game, there are a lot of reasons to think that it'll pay off pretty nicely for you. And then finally, wrapping things up here, actually, Jake said, sorry to backtrack. How is the stolen base matchup for the Marlins against Senga? That's a good question. I don't think I have pulled that page up yet this year. Let me see if I can get to it quickly. Where is it? Free tools. Stolen base success versus pitcher. For anybody looking for this, Rasball has a very good. Well, actually, it looks like it hasn't been updated. It says it was updated today. So, yeah, Rasball has a page if you go to MLB tools and then free tools that has a stolen base thing. I haven't looked at it yet this year, so I don't remember immediately how to read it. Only 3 stolen bases in the 37 stolen base sample it had through last year. Let me get his Fangraphs page because I don't think that's actually been updated since like June. Senga. Allowed 11 stolen bases last year. Did he get hurt like immediately last year? And I just don't remember this. I thought last year was his rookie year. Anyway, he allowed 11 stolen bases in, I guess, 2023. I must just be completely forgetting about him missing last year because that explains why his strikeout numbers were off when I was looking at them earlier too. But anyway, 11 stolen bases in 166 innings in 2023. Probably a matchup where like they're not actively avoiding it, but it's not like a great matchup. Yeah, so apparently I just completely forgot about that. So that explains my confusion at the beginning of the show when Fangraphs was telling me that since last year, Senga has a 45% strikeout percentage. He does because he's pitched 10 innings. But yeah, like I said, 11 stolen bases allowed. So definitely not somebody that I think they're like actively running on. And it's not like he allowed 0. So I'm not going on my way to like target the Marlins in this park against him. But if they get on, maybe the fast guys will run. San Diego taking on Oakland or Sacramento, California, Vegas, whatever the hell they're called, in Sacramento. And I am getting to a lot of San Diego here. The field's getting to them. So this is a spot where, I'm getting to a pretty popular team for the most part. Don't know what's going on with Diaz here. Looks like I didn't have him projected in, but he's projected for ownership. So that's just a lineup discrepancy thing. If he is in the lineup at 2,200, that's a reasonable value bet. But obviously getting to Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, Cronenworth, Manny Machado, Bogarts, any of these guys here are going to look good. The Padres have the second highest implied run total behind the Mets, facing Severino, who you never know what the hell you're going to get. But he's not a pitcher that I mind taking hitters against. He was solid last year, only a 113 expected ISO to righties, 169 to lefties. We know, obviously, going back to his time with the Yankees, he was really good. My assumption now is he's kind of just like a middle-of-the-road guy. And I'm fine taking talented bats against him in a AAA park. On the other side, the A's going up against King. Not getting to much of them. Langoliers, you can always make a pretty strong case for because he's only 4,100. He has as much power as pretty much any catcher in baseball. It's basically the Cal Raleigh play. Regardless of matchup, he has as much upside as any catcher because he hits the ball really far. So he's fine. He's getting some ownership here. I'm not getting to much else. Lawrence Butler getting a little bit of ownership at 5,100. He does obviously give you power upside and stolen base upside. I'm just kind of looking elsewhere. As far as pitching goes, I'm not getting to Severino. I wouldn't really want to. Not a great strikeout matchup against the Padres. Plenty of good hitters there. Not a great strikeout pitcher. On the other side, I do like Michael King. $9,200 price tag, 19% ownership. I'm getting to 17%. We know the A's are dangerous. We know they have a lot of young talent in their lineup. They have guys that can do damage, but they also have strikeouts, and Michael King is good at getting strikeouts as well. 28.2% K percentage since the start of last season is identical to Hunter Green. 8.7% walk percentage, almost identical. 3.46 xFIP is like a half run better. Good pitcher, good strikeout matchup. Less than 1 home run allowed per 9 innings last year as well is good to see. So I do like getting to him as an SP1, SP2, whatever you want to call it. So to recap how things look right now, and again, keep in mind, I ran this stuff at like 4:30. Take it with a grain of salt. Didn't have all the lineups. Ownership probably changes, all of that. But I did go through and give you my thoughts on pretty much every player. But if the slate had started at 4:30, Hunter Green, huge priority for me. I don't think that's going to change. Love that. Hayden Wesneski, big priority as a value play. That is more likely to change. Not saying it will, but like that's more, I think, ownership driven at only 8%. If that comes up to 15, my exposure probably comes down. But I kind of think that like even if Hunter Green got to like 30, 35%, maybe I wouldn't have 71, but I'd still have a lot. With the inputs I had, though, Wesneski looked good. Evaldi and King right around the field, and then get into some Eflin, Gallen. Pretty big fades on Senga, Gilbert, and Steele and Webb. Again, to reiterate, I didn't have anything that I hated about any of those guys. Steele is the only one that we have a big gap versus the industry in terms of projection. And I think what's really driving that is without knowing what goes into industry projections, I do think they're pretty heavily driven by Vegas lines. And a 3.5 implied run total doesn't necessarily mean a lot. Like you can end up with an elevated projection when you think about how DFS points are scored versus the actual game of baseball. Giving up, facing a team with a 3.5 implied run total, if you're an average strikeout pitcher and don't have a great strikeout matchup, it doesn't necessarily mean you're likely to have a great DFS game. It means you're likely to not give up a lot of runs, which doesn't mean a ton in DFS. So Steele's the only one that I think we have like a pretty big difference in projection versus the industry. The rest of them, it's just, for one reason or another, they weren't showing up in my personal process. But again, if you want to play some Logan Webb, or if you want to play Steele, he's fine. It's just, again, I think we're I'm not as high on, we're not as high on him as the industry is, but he still projects fine. Webb, and especially Gilbert and Senga. Like those guys are good plays, Gilbert and Senga in particular. Obviously, really high upside, probably the two best pitchers on the slate in terms of talent. They're just not showing up in my personal process for whatever reason right now. Don't want to talk anybody off of them, but I'm not really getting to them. As far as offenses go, Mets looking great for me. Getting to the Padres, getting to the Orioles, getting to the Astros as a contrarian stack, getting to the Diamondbacks a bit, getting to the Reds a bit. As far as five mans go, Mets, Reds, Orioles, Padres, D-backs looking like my top five. Houston and Minnesota right behind them. So pretty flat for me as far as exposures go, with the exception of the Mets offense, Hunter Green and Hayden Wesneski. Pretty confident that Green is around to stay. Maybe the Mets change, maybe they don't. Maybe Wesneski changes, maybe he doesn't. I don't mind if they do. I don't mind if they don't. But that's how this one looks for me right now. And again, reminder, you can use our projections. They are now live at Run the Sims, Uticow, Brick75, Nerdy Tanner, and myself. Worked hard, some of us harder than others. Me on the low end of the actual work that went into these, but very excited to have these live on the site. All the stuff that Yuta wanted is in them. All the stuff that I've talked about for years is in them. Check those out. Link is in the description below. Other than that, I will be back tomorrow doing the show again. You will see more consistency now that I actually have our projections to use. Really excited about that. Excited to do shows with them, talk through everything. See you back here tomorrow, and good luck on your lineups tonight.